There's no way for us to compete with that sound, so we won't even try. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Eddy, and I am the president of Metaverse Public Relations. We are a specialist PR firm that does PR for Web3 companies and into the Metaverse as well. So happy to be here today. Daniel's going to introduce himself really quick, but I've got a question for everyone. So this session is about startups and PR. I'm curious how many startups are here. Okay, cool. All right, this is for you. And how many PR people are here? Uh-oh, all right, just one that's gonna challenge me. Good.
Nice.
All right, cool.
Hi guys, I'm Daniel Sisson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CyberHub Syndicate. We're a virtual reality software company working on enabling more custom VR builds. So we are a high code platform, not a low code or no code platform. We're basically dev tools built on top of Unity. We do have a booth, come check it out. We have a demo, should be working well by the end of today. So come check it out. We're gonna dive right into it since we don't really have a ton of time for this session. So the whole thing here is me as a co-founder and startup person talking with Eric and talking about PR. And just right out the gate, what the hell is PR?
Nobody's ever asked me what the hell is PR. PR, yes. Okay, so people think that PR is social. People think PR is influencer, or it's events, or it's sending press releases out. It's definitely all of those things. I would say, bottom line, public relations is about generating exposure in the press. So at the end of the day, client hires us, they've got some news, we have to get it out, we've got to get it covered in industry trade publications, we've got to get it covered in a Business Week or a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal. So ultimately, it is about press coverage. It's also about things like this, speaking engagements. We're asked to get our clients, up on stage. It builds instant credibility. So business-to-business communications, public relations is really about generating exposure. Underneath all of that, that's the end result. Underneath all of that, you do need a sound strategy. You need your messaging. You need your positioning. But if you really think about what PR is, it's the press.
Yeah, that makes sense. Over the course of my career, I spent a good chunk of time, 10 years or so, in San Francisco working for tech startups before I became a founder in a wide variety of roles, some of them marketing related. And I've probably fired more PR agencies than I've hired. Early on, I was very skeptical. I was very skeptical of PR. Slowly over time, I began to kind of convert and shift my mindset as I saw some use cases where it was very successful. But tell us a little bit about, how can it be effective, and talk to startup founders that are more skeptical. I've slowly begun to convert, but talk to them that are still skeptical.
Yeah. So there's reason to be skeptical, right? You're a startup, you got a limited amount of money, and you don't know what's going to happen with public relations. Will it really move the needle for your business? It's hard to know that. I would say, in working with a PR agency, you can dramatically change your visibility in a positive way if you want to. What are some of the other things that you've considered in terms of marketing yourself?
Yeah, so as a startup, you're looking at obviously ad spend, and you're looking at a content strategy, whether you hire somebody in-house or you push that out of house. The big one is like the cost associated with it as well. So obviously, for a very mature startup, having a PR agency makes sense, but early on, maybe not. Can you talk a little bit about when it may make sense to bring on PR?
Sure. So there's two initial ways that you can get press as a startup. One is just through your company launch. So simply, if you're in existence 6 months, you have an opportunity to tell your story to the press. So that means, and I'm glad there's only one PR person in the audience, because PR people shudder at this, but I recommend it. There's plenty of press releases online that are company launch press releases. You can simply take that, plug in what you guys are doing, and look at the industry trade publications that you respect, get that out to some reporters, and you will see some press coverage from that. Second thing you can do that I would recommend without a PR agency is your product launch. So, look for, again, the publications that cover your products, your clients, your competitor products, and put together a press release around that. You'll likely generate exposure. The time to engage with a PR agency is when you've got some velocity. There we go. Thank you. There we go, much better. When you've got some velocity in the market, when you've got clients, so you've got some credibility, when you've got your positioning down, all of those are kind of signals like now's the time to get some PR, really full-time PR support.
Yeah, in our case, we started not that long ago. We actually officially incorporated at the end of July, are not really super officially launched at this present moment. So we've been around, August, September, October, November, December, 5 months. I think I'm running out of time. I got to launch here.
Now's the time.
Maybe here, officially, yay. Okay, so we'll get that out pretty soon. Really kind of wanting to dive into the metaverse itself, why we're all here. Obviously, my startup is focused on enabling more virtual reality custom builds out there. And you start to think about how the world is shifting. All of us are here because, in theory, we're involved somewhat in virtual or augmented reality, and we all start to get a little bit excited about the metaverse. I obviously read a ton of sci-fi. It's a big part of why I got into this. What do you think about PR where it comes to the metaverse? Like, how is the world shifting, the digital landscape, and where does PR fit into a metaverse future?
Yeah, I think that we've had to, through Web 1 and Web 2 and now Web 3, we've really had to evolve as public relations people. So obviously with the advent of Facebook and Twitter, we had to kind of learn how to use those as communications channels. The metaverse is going to be the same way, except it's going to be this richly textured experience to take reporters into. So it's going to be much more visual, it will be much more visceral, and it's just going to be a better way for PR people to do storytelling. So I'm excited about it. There's many tactics that we're going to change by being involved with the metaverse. One is what we call the kind of traditional product press tour, which is essentially what you used to do is take a product, hardware product, straight to a reporter's desk, let them touch it, feel it, ask questions. Now, with the metaverse, you can be in New York, you can have a reporter in Tokyo, you can give the reporter haptic gloves, 6 months ahead of the product launch, invite them to your metaverse store and have them, with the gloves, actually feel the product in the similar way that they would in a real life environment. So for me, that as a PR person, that's going to be a great way to bring value to our clients, just through that kind of unique metaverse PR-ish experience.
Yeah, I like that. So product launches are going to be definitely affected by the metaverse. What about if you start thinking about just the public at large? Like, what does that mean as far as engaging? A couple other examples off the top of my head. I'm thinking about, we're doing public speaking here now. I'm assuming at some point you go beyond just physical public speaking and start thinking about virtual public speaking and things like that.
Tell me more about your question, actually.
So right now, I'm assuming you've mentioned early in the conversation that one of the things that you focus on is getting the client's public speaking engagements.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's a pretty significant part of the PR strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. It's in a metaverse context?
So in a metaverse context, right now at this present moment, there aren't really a ton of virtual conferences. Even us here, we're doing this live basically, and the virtual version is not really like digital avatars here, but at some point in the nearest future, that may be a more realistic option. Would you expand your portfolio of tactics to include driving clients to virtual public speaking engagements?
Oh, completely. I think a metaverse experience for PR purposes is very audio oriented. I think it's podcasts, I think it's conferences, I think it's more webinars. I think you're going to see, all of that exponentially kind of multiply as time goes on. As a metaverse experience becomes more kind of mass, adopted, we'll will get value from all the audio bits that are coming out of it, for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Thinking about the audio, it's like I wonder sometimes when the AR glasses start to actually kick off, it's going to be a little more interesting. Like, I mean, we already do it to some extent right now. Every time I go on my runs or walks, I'm always got my pods in, listening to podcasts. I assume we're going to be doing the same thing, but
same
just
thing.
Glasses.
Yep, same thing for sure. I wanted to go back to something you asked, which was, kind of the value of PR. So the greatest compliment that I've ever gotten in public relations was a client who said to us, this is a smallish company, like 1,000 people in Connecticut. They said that the PR made them seem larger than life. This is a networking hubs, bridges, switches, routers company, and the PR was basic business-to-business communications, but it went straight, a lot of the PR went straight at their kind of competitors, right? And I mean, you can ask me anything about speeds and feeds in a network hub, and I've got the answer. So there was a lot of kind of product differentiation around the public relations work. Their two primary competitors were gorillas in the industry, 3Com and Cisco. And ultimately, the client said, you made us seem larger than life, and you could see that in the bottom line sales. Like, they'd actually dramatically increase their sales, and ultimately that meant, that they were super pleased with the work that we did.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I wanted to give myself a pat on the back
absolutely
for that.
Digital pat.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I think that's interesting. You start thinking about the metaverse and where this is all going, like being larger than life and being able to have your client be in the traditional thing, so whether that's print or digital or podcast, and then also starting to transcend into digital experiences, virtual experiences, and VR, AR experiences is really kind of interesting. You can go larger than this life and larger than the virtual one too.
For sure.
Exciting.
How about you? What do you think as a developer? What do you think other VR, XR, AR companies should know about designing for marketing purposes or for PR purposes? Are there things that you think about on an industry level that would, help you appeal more to like a branding, solution?
If I were like a traditional company thinking
Yeah.
about where VR fits.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hold on, let me think about that for a second. Actually, just recently, we were it was Thanksgiving, right? And my wife's family came into town, and my brother-in-law was there. He's the president of a large audio company. I won't give it all away, but audio company for lack of a better term. And he was trying out some of the games that we were developing for one of our enterprise clients that was for marketing purposes as well. This is a large enterprise tech company. Again, can't quite say who, but we're making a really cool game for them for marketing purposes at conferences, just to help them showcase them as being more future forward, and obviously it'll be like a booth draw. So he was playtesting the game, and he got really excited about VR as a concept, and being that they make audio devices, and he was saying, could you use VR to showcase us versus the competitor's device? And in their case, they have a richer ability to capture 3D audio from all different sources. And I'm trying to like obfuscate this a little bit, but if you figure out who my brother-in-law is, I guess you can figure out what's going on here. But and the competitor's device really only captures audio directionally from the forward. And so he was asking, like, could you use VR to showcase the difference between richness and directional? And what's funny about VR is this is actually a fantastic use case for VR, because you can create a simulated environment that has different sounds coming from all around you, and then obviously with the software very easily you could show, like, can you hear the sounds spatially, or can you only hear sounds directly in front of you? And so he got really excited about that, and we started kind of brainstorming what you can do. And he was asking, what would this cost typically? And I don't know. It depends on, however much money you got, really. But in this case, I think that they could probably invest in a couple of headsets. The Quest 2 is probably totally fine. So Quest 2s are $350 right now? So buy a couple of those. And then from the dev cost, Like our platform is not that expensive right now because we're still super early and in beta. And then the actual custom development work for a proof of concept like this definitely sub 100,000, maybe even in the $20,000-$30,000 range for a super simple simulation. And so for him, he's like, yeah, that's really exciting because if I can sign off on something for less than 100K all in and do a really fun kind of sales and marketing campaign, then we can get some headsets out in the market with my sales guys, and this will be a huge play. And so that's just one tiny example that is similar, I guess, to your Japanese journalist example, but in this case, you're putting headsets in the salesperson's hand.
Yeah.
And that's a great use case.
Yeah. Again, it's going back to creating a richer experience, isn't it? And really distinguishing the product from a visual standpoint, in this case, from a listening standpoint. And
audio sensory.
Do that with.
Yeah, you can do that with today's technology. You don't even have to go into the metaverse. I mean, you can do that straight up with Unity and a Quest 2. And I mean, I guess that's a whole nother debate for another day around, is the metaverse here or is that coming down the pike? But what's your take on that? Is the metaverse here now, coming down the pike?
I think aesthetically the metaverse is not here yet, and I think that turns off, the kind of the mainstream consumer. I think for educational purposes, it's great. For just, again, speaking from the media perspective, I think that media are starting to get some stories, actually, from traveling into metaverses, which is an exciting, thing for us to explore. I think in the future, we talked about this a little bit beforehand. I think in the future, you're going to see even crisis communications moments, opportunities for reporters who are, they're in a metaverse to cover some kind of crisis that's happening, and it's going to be up to PR people to kind of go into that and offset whatever kind of anti-company story is happening. So that's the future, but I think for right now, it's okay for PR. Obviously, for mainstream adoption, it's not great, in my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's a ways, the metaverse as we're envisioning it is probably a bit of a ways away, but there's still a lot of really interesting use cases in both, mostly VR. AR is close. We'll see what happens with Apple next year, but the Magic Leap 2 is pretty cool. Shout out to those guys. I'm not affiliated with them, but it's a cool headset. I think that right now, the most obvious use case is around video games. So VR video games is the most obvious use case. And then where does that translate to the business side of things is, training and education, which is essentially just a boring video game with a purpose. And then also the marketing and sales use cases we talked about. So whether that was my brother-in-law's company or what we're doing for the other major enterprise company that I can't mention, or your example you had with the Japanese journalists from Tokyo interacting with the PR person in New York. Those to me make a lot of sense right now. So sales and marketing, training, those are big use cases, I think, and whether it's truly metaverse or just VR, I think the distinction is not too relevant really at this present moment.
Yeah. So did I convince you that PR is going to be good for your startup?
Yeah, we're still pretty early, I think, actually. So for us, the thing that you've got me thinking is I should not squander this moment to actually officially do a launch. We're still pretty early. I mean, we started, like, very technically speaking, we scheduled, we filed paperwork with the state of Delaware at the very end of July. So now it's like we've got the product done. Like what you said, I think you mentioned to me at one point, even in our conversations in the past, that like once you've got your positioning lasered in, that's the moment that you really need to officially launch.
Well, this is it, that startups oftentimes shift their positioning, right? Every 3 months, they talk to a VC, they talk to a reporter, they get a lot of holes poked in what they're trying to present to the world, and so they naturally will shift. And so if you go out right away to the press with your positioning, they'll remember how you talk about yourself. So I recommend kind of, waiting a little bit, kind of honing that positioning, your message over a bit of time, and then you'll know. I mean, a launch for a reporter implies that you're in existence. So if you wait a year after the official real launch date, a reporter that's worth their weight, they're gonna go online, check it out, and see that you've been talking about yourself for a year and probably not consider that hard news. So you gotta be a little sensitive to that, but also give you some wiggle room because you are a startup, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to be cautious around the story that you tell and make sure it's a little bit bulletproof.
Yeah, makes sense. I think we're really close. You talked about, so very close to getting our positioning lasered in and then, kicking off a big launch. But thinking about your Tokyo examples, maybe really think about how can we create some sort of, since our software does this, how can we create some sort of really interesting immersive experience to bring the journalists into when we officially launch? We do that built on our own software, which would be...
I think that's a great idea. You should use me to do that.
Absolutely. All right. I think our time is basically up. If there's any questions, I think we're up, so we'll be outside. Just find us outside, and we'll grab you guys for some questions.
All right. Thank you.